The sky over the planet Serene was dark and heavy with storm clouds. Lightning flashed in the distance, lighting up the jagged mountains that surrounded the great fortress. Inside the fortress, Empress Skyra sat on her throne, calm and proud. She was the ruler of the Serene Empire, a powerful alien race that had controlled many star systems for centuries. Skyra wore her shining armor, made of a strange metal that no weapon could pierce. Her eyes burned with cold fire, and her voice was full of pride. She knew the humans were far away, weak and slow, and she was certain they could never defeat her. But far below the fortress, the silence broke. A group of soldiers moved quickly and quietly through the shadows. At their head was Marcus Briggs, a human soldier known for his skill and courage. He led the raid on the fortress with steady steps and calm breath. Marcus had heard many stories about Empress Skyra. Some said she was cruel and proud. Others said she was smart and dangerous. But Marcus was not afraid. He believed in humanity, strong, stubborn, and always ready to fight. As Marcus and his team reached the main gate, alarms began to ring. Red lights flashed, and loud sirens echoed through the fortress halls. The Serene soldiers rushed to defend their empress, but Marcus and his team were ready. The fight was fast and fierce. Blaster fire lit the dark halls, and the sound of clashing metal filled the air. Marcus moved carefully, his eyes sharp, his mind focused. He dodged attacks and fought back with skill. Slowly, they pushed closer to the throne room. Finally, Marcus stepped into the large chamber where Empress Skyra waited. She stood tall and proud, her armor shining even in the dim light. Her eyes met his with a cold, sharp look. "So the weak humans come to challenge me," Skyra said, her voice full of mocking laughter. "Do you really think you can defeat an empress? You are nothing but insects compared to us." Marcus did not answer right away. He looked at the empress, seeing her pride and anger. Then he said calmly, "We don't need to be stronger than you to win. We only need to be smarter and braver." Skyra laughed again, a sound like metal scraping on stone. "Brave? You are fools to think you can take my throne." But Marcus was not a fool. He knew this was only the beginning. The battle between humans and the Serene Empire was far from over, and he was ready to show the Empress just how powerful humanity could be. With a nod to his team, Marcus prepared to face the Empress and her armor. The raid was a risk, but it was their best chance to change the future. The Empress still taunted, but Marcus's eyes never left her. The war had come to Serene, and it would not end until one side stood victorious. The throne room was cold and dark, lit only by the glowing panels in the walls. Empress Skyra stood tall, her shining armor reflecting the dim light. Her eyes locked on Marcus Briggs, the human soldier who had dared to enter her fortress. "You think you can beat me?" Skyra's voice was sharp, full of anger and pride. "You are weak, nothing compared to the strength of my empire." Marcus did not move. He stayed calm, his eyes steady on the Empress. "Strength is not just about muscles or armor," he said slowly. "It's about heart, courage, and knowing when to fight." Skyra sneered. "Your words mean nothing. You are just a soldier, and I am an empress. I have armies, weapons, and power you cannot understand." Marcus smiled slightly. "Maybe. But humans survive because we never give up. We keep fighting, even when things look impossible." The Empress laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Foolish human, you don't know what you face. My armor is stronger than anything you have ever seen. It protects me from every attack." Marcus looked at her armor carefully. It was beautiful and deadly, a perfect shield that made her almost untouchable. But he was not afraid. He had a plan. "Armor can be broken," Marcus said quietly. "It's not the armor that wins wars. It's the mind behind the armor." Skyra's eyes narrowed. She had faced many enemies, but none like this calm, brave soldier. He did not tremble or shout. He spoke with confidence, with a strange kind of power. The room grew tense. Outside, the sounds of battle continued. Marcus knew his team was fighting hard to hold the fortress. He had to win this face-off quickly. Zyra took a step forward, her voice dripping with challenge. "Show me, human. How will you break my armor? How will you defeat me?" Marcus raised his weapon, but he did not fire. Instead, he pulled out a small device from his pocket, a human invention designed to disrupt energy fields. He aimed it at the Empress's armor. A sharp buzz filled the room as the device worked. Zyra's armor flickered for a moment, and her eyes widened in surprise. You cannot do this," she shouted, but the device continued to weaken her armor's power. Marcus stepped closer. "I told you, your armor is strong, but it has its limits. And your pride? That can be broken too." The Empress growled in frustration. She lunged at Marcus, her strength amplified by the armor, but the soldier was quick. He dodged her attack, landing a solid blow on a weak point in the suit. Zyra staggered back, shocked. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. Marcus kept his steady calm. "This fight isn't just about weapons or armor. It's about willpower. And I believe humans have more of it than you know." The Empress glared at him, but something inside her had changed. The proud, untouchable ruler now faced a human who was not afraid. And maybe, just maybe, that was what scared her most. Empress Zyra stood in the throne room, her breathing heavy but controlled. Her armor, once glowing brightly with energy, now flickered in small patches. Marcus Briggs had done the impossible. He had shaken the strength of her armor with a small device. The armor was more than just metal and lights. It was a symbol of her power, a gift from her ancestors, and a weapon that made her almost untouchable in battle. It wrapped around her like a second skin, making her strong and fast. Zyra looked down at the glowing lines running across the armor's surface. "This suit is my legacy," she said quietly, her voice softer now. "It protects me from death, pain, and defeat." Marcus watched her carefully. He understood the meaning behind the armor. It was not just protection, but also pride and history. If he wanted to defeat the Empress, he had to break not only her armor, but also her spirit. "The armor is strong," Marcus said, "but even the strongest armor has weak spots. Every machine has a way to be stopped." Zyra's eyes burned with fire again. "You think you can find those spots? Many have tried, and all have failed." Marcus stepped closer, his gaze never leaving her. "I don't have to find them all. Just one is enough." Suddenly, alarms rang throughout the fortress. The battle outside was growing fiercer. Marcus knew time was running out. Zyra raised her armored hand, and a powerful energy shield flared to life around her. "You will never touch me," she said, voice full of cold confidence. Marcus raised his device again, sending out pulses that flickered against the shield. The shield buzzed, but held firm. Still, cracks began to appear in its energy. "Your shield is strong," Marcus admitted, "but it won't last forever." Zyra's eyes darted around the room. She was not used to feeling cornered. Usually, her armor gave her complete control. Marcus's heart beat fast, but he stayed calm. "I don't want to destroy you, Empress," he said. "I want to show you that humans are more than just fighters. We are survivors." Zyra narrowed her eyes. "Survivors? You think survival makes you strong?" "Yes," Marcus said, "because survival means you keep going, even when everything is against you." The Empress paused. For the first time, she considered his words. She had lived centuries surrounded by power and respect, but never faced a human like this. With a sudden movement, Marcus fired a small pulse from his device aimed at a joint in her armor, the place where the arm connected to the shoulder. The pulse hit the weak spot, and the armor sparked and hissed. Zyra cried out in surprise and pain. The armor's strength flickered. Marcus saw his chance. He moved faster than she expected and grabbed the edge of her chest plate, pulling hard. The armor cracked. Zyra gasped. For the first time, in a long time, The Empress was vulnerable. Marcus felt the armor crack under his hands. Empress Syra's breath hitched. The shining plates, once perfect and strong, were starting to break. The room was silent except for the low hum of the fortress and the distant echoes of battle. Zyra's eyes burned with anger, but also something else. Fear. She had never been vulnerable like this. Marcus could see it, but he did not let his guard down. The armor was only one part of the fight. "Give up, Empress," Marcus said quietly but firmly. "You don't have to suffer more. We can end this without more bloodshed." Zyra's voice was cold but shaky. "I will never give up. My people need me." Marcus nodded. He respected that. "I'm not here to destroy your people. I want peace." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "Peace. You think I will trust a human soldier? Your kind destroyed my cities." Marcus's face hardened. "Maybe some did, but not all humans. We fight for what is right." Suddenly, Zyra lunged forward, her broken armor barely holding together. Marcus dodged just in time. The Empress was fast, stronger than he expected even without her full armor. He raised his weapon, ready to defend himself, but he didn't want to hurt her. She was proud, but also trapped in her own war. Marcus moved carefully, watching her every step. The armor was falling apart, but Syra was still dangerous. "Why do you fight so hard?" Marcus asked. "Is it just for power?" Tidera paused. "It's for my people, my empire. If I fall, everything falls." Marcus lowered his weapon a little. "We all want to protect those we love, but sometimes, to protect them, we have to change." The Empress looked at him, confused and angry. "Change? What do you know about change?" "I know this war has cost too many lives," Marcus said. "Your empire and my people. If we don't stop fighting, there will be nothing left for either of us." Zyra's breath slowed. She looked down at her broken armor, then back at Marcus. For a moment, the proud Empress was just a leader, scared of losing everything. Marcus saw a chance. "Let me help you," he said, "not as an enemy, but as a soldier who wants peace." The Empress did not answer. The room filled with tension. Outside, the sounds of battle were growing louder. Marcus knew time was short. But inside, something had shifted. The Empress's armor was broken, her power weakened. Yet her spirit was strong. Marcus stood ready. He would not give up. Not until he had done everything to end this fight. The raid had begun as a mission to capture a powerful enemy. Now it was something more. A chance to change the future of two worlds. The heavy silence in the throne room was broken only by the distant sounds of battle outside. Empress Styra stood still, her armor cracked and sparking in places, but her eyes still filled with fire. Marcus Briggs faced her, steady and calm. The moment felt like the edge of a knife, sharp, dangerous, and full of possibility. Zyra's breathing was slow but deep. The armor that had made her nearly invincible was no longer whole. It felt like the last barrier between her and defeat was slipping away. "Why won't you surrender?" Marcus asked softly. "This fight can end now." Zyra's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Because I am an empress. I do not give up. My people depend on me." Marcus nodded, understanding her pride and pain. "I respect that. But sometimes being a leader means knowing when to change." She looked away, the weight of her crown pressing down on her shoulders. "Change is weakness," she whispered. "No," Marcus said gently. "Change can be strength. The strength to survive, to protect, to build a better future." For a moment, Syra said nothing. The silence grew thick, like a heavy fog. Then, with a sudden move, she reached down and removed a piece of her broken armor from her arm. The metal was cool and smooth, but the act felt like shedding part of herself. She looked at the piece in her hand, as if seeing it for the first time. "I trusted this armor," she said quietly. "It made me feel strong, safe. But maybe I was wrong." Marcus took a step forward. Sometimes we trust the wrong things to protect us, but the real strength is inside. Zyra's eyes met his again, softer now, less full of fire and more full of thought. Outside the fortress, the sounds of battle were getting louder. Marcus knew his team was fighting hard to hold the place, but the future was no longer just about fighting. It was about choices. Zyra dropped the piece of armor to the ground. It clattered softly on the stone floor. Marcus reached out and picked it up. "You don't have to wear that armor to be powerful." She shook her head. "Power is more than armor. It is fear. It is control." Marcus smiled. "Or it can be hope, trust, courage." The Empress took a deep breath, her shoulders straightening. She looked at Marcus not as an enemy, but as someone who might understand her. "Show me," she said quietly. "Show me this strength you speak of." Marcus felt a spark of hope. He knew this was only the beginning. The armor was broken, but the real battle, between old pride and new hope, was just starting. Together, they would have to find a way to build something new from the ashes of war. And in that moment, the Empress who once taunted a human soldier could not speak, because she was beginning to understand something greater than power. The throne room felt different now. The heavy air of tension and anger had changed into something quieter, almost like a calm before a new storm. Empress Styra stood still, her armor broken and scattered around her feet. Marcus Briggs watched her carefully, waiting. For a long moment, the Empress did not speak. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. It was the first time Marcus saw her silent. She had been so full of words before, words to taunt, to threaten, to control. But now, stripped of her armor and her power, she had no words left. Silence. Marcus stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly. "Sometimes silence is the strongest answer." Zyra blinked slowly. She looked lost, unsure. The Empress, who once ruled with a voice like thunder, was silent. And in that silence, Marcus saw something new, a flicker of respect, maybe even fear. He thought about all the stories he had heard about the alien Empress, how proud and cruel she was. But now he saw a different side. The leader who was human in her own way, scared, uncertain, but still strong. Outside the fortress, the battle was still raging. Marcus knew his team needed him. But here, in this quiet moment, something important was happening. He lowered his weapon and extended his hand. "It's okay to be silent," he said. "You don't have to fight me anymore." Zyra hesitated. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. The grip was firm but careful, like she was testing a new idea. Marcus felt a strange hope grow inside him. Maybe this silence was not defeat. Maybe it was the start of something better. The Empress's eyes searched his face. For the first time, she looked at him not as an enemy but as a human, a soldier who had shown her courage and respect. No words came, but Marcus understood. The armor was gone. The taunts were gone. And the silence between them said more than any battle cry ever could. Marcus knew the war was not over. But he also knew that the hardest battles were not fought with weapons. They were fought with trust and understanding. As the two stood there, the silence grew stronger. It was a quiet promise. A chance to change the future. The Empress still could not speak, but her silence was not weakness. It was a shield, a moment of reflection, and maybe, just maybe, the first step toward peace. Outside, the fortress shook with the sounds of war. But inside, a quiet calm settled. Marcus looked at the Empress once more, and in that silence, he saw the power of humanity, strong, brave, and ready to change the stars. The silence in the throne room was heavy, but it carried a new meaning. Empress Zyra's eyes, once full of anger and pride, now held something different, respect. She still could not speak, but her expression said more than words ever could. Marcus Briggs lowered his weapon and stepped back. The battlefield outside still roared, but inside this room, something was changing. The power had shifted, not by force, but by courage and understanding. For centuries, Xyra's empire had ruled many planets with strength and fear. She had been untouchable, wrapped in her shining armor that made her a living god to her people. But now, stripped of her armor and silenced, she was vulnerable. And that vulnerability held power too. Marcus looked at her and said softly, "You don't have to fight alone anymore. We can work together, humans and Zareen." Xyra's eyes narrowed, thinking deeply. Her silence was not just because she could not speak. It was because she was choosing her words carefully. The pride of an empress did not break easily. Marcus took a small step closer. "You taught me something today. That strength is not just about weapons or armor. It's about heart, about fighting for what you believe in." The Empress's eyes softened just a little. She looked at the broken pieces of her armor scattered on the floor. They were symbols of a past she had clung to for so long. Outside the throne room, the sound of battle began to quiet down. The soldiers were weary. They'd waited for the next order. But for once, Marcus and Xyra were the ones deciding what came next. Marcus reached out his hand again, not as a soldier or enemy, but as a partner. "Let us end this war, together." Xyra hesitated, but then slowly she lifted her hand and placed it in his. The gesture was small, but it carried the weight of hope and change. A new power was born, not from weapons or fear, but from trust. Marcus smiled. He knew this was only the first step, but it was a step towards something better. The galaxy had seen many wars, but maybe, just maybe, it was time for peace. The Empress still could not speak, but in her silence, there was a promise that her empire and the humans would find a way to stand side by side. And as Marcus looked into her eyes, he knew that the true battle, the battle for understanding and peace, had just begun. Outside, the stars shone bright, watching over a new beginning. The fortress was quiet now. The fierce battle outside had ended, leaving only the sound of soft footsteps and distant echoes. Inside the throne room, Marcus Briggs and Empress Xyra stood facing each other. The air between them was filled with a new kind of energy, not anger, but curiosity and hope. Marcus looked at the Empress, her armor gone, her silence still strong, but no longer cold. He wanted to explain something important, something that might change everything. "Empress," Marcus began, "your armor made you strong, but it was only part of your power. Humans have something different, something you may not see." Xyra's eyes narrowed slightly, curious. Marcus took a deep breath and continued. "Humans are not the strongest or the fastest. Our weapons are not always the best. But we survive because we adapt. We learn, we work together, and we never give up." He paused, seeing Xyra's thoughtful expression. "When things seem impossible, humans find new ways to fight. We use our minds and hearts, not just our strength." The Empress studied him carefully. She had been a ruler for many years, but she had never heard such words from an enemy before. Marcus smiled gently. "That is the human advantage. We turn challenges into chances. We find hope where others see only danger." Xyra looked away, remembering the long wars her empire had fought. Many times, they had lost because they believed only in power and fear. "Your people may be weaker in battle," Marcus said, "but stronger in spirit. That is why you survive." The Empress did not answer. She looked down, her mind full of questions. Could she trust a human? Could she change the way her empire had fought for centuries? Marcus stepped closer and lowered his voice. "I don't want to fight you anymore. I want to help you build a future where humans and Zareen can live in peace." Xyra's eyes met his again. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, hope. The walls of the throne room seemed less cold. The distant storm outside was fading. Two leaders, once enemies, were beginning to understand each other. Marcus knew the road ahead would not be easy. Old battles and old fears would not disappear overnight. But he also knew that every journey begins with a single step. We can learn from each other, Marcus said softly. Your empire has strength and wisdom. Our people have heart and courage. Together, we can be stronger. Zyra nodded slowly. Her silence was still with her, but now it was full of promise. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt bright. Outside, the stars watched quietly as two worlds began to find a way forward, together. Empress Zyra sat alone in a quiet chamber of the fortress. The heavy armor that once made her feel untouchable was gone, and with it, much of her old confidence. The room was dimly lit by soft blue lights, casting gentle shadows on the walls. For hours, she thought about everything that had happened. The battle, Marcus Briggs, the way he had looked at her, not as an enemy, but as someone who believed in peace. Zyra's mind was full of questions. Was her empire truly as strong as she had believed? Could she trust a human soldier? Could she change the way things had always been? She touched the small piece of broken armor she still kept, a reminder of the fight, but also of her defeat. Strength, she whispered to herself, is more than power. It is more than fear. Her eyes closed as memories flooded her mind. Centuries of war, pride, and control. A legacy built on dominance. But now, in this quiet moment, she saw things differently. The Empress realized that her empire had grown too proud, too certain of its place in the stars. That pride had made her blind to the strength of others, especially the humans. Marcus's words echoed in her mind. We survive because we adapt, because we fight with heart. She opened her eyes, seeing the room with new clarity. Change was difficult. It was scary. But maybe it was necessary. Outside the chamber, the fortress was quiet. The war was over, but the real battle had just begun. A battle for trust, for hope, and for a future that was not written in blood. Zyra stood and walked to the window. The stars shone brightly in the night sky, endless and full of possibility. She thought about the humans, so different from her people, yet so strong in ways she had never understood before. A soft voice came from behind. It was one of her advisors. Empress, the humans wait for your decision. Zyra turned slowly, her eyes steady. She was no longer the proud, untouchable ruler. She was a leader ready to listen and learn. Tell Marcus Briggs, she said quietly, that I accept his offer. It is time to build a new future, together. Her advisor nodded and left. Zyra returned to the window, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it. For the first time, the Empress who once taunted a human soldier saw a new possibility, not in weapons or armor, but in unity and understanding. The stars outside seemed to shine just a little brighter. The great hall of the fortress was filled with a quiet energy. Soldiers from both the Zyrene Empire and the human forces stood together, watching. The war was over, but a new challenge had begun. Empress Zyra entered slowly, her steps sure but humble. She wore simple robes now, no armor, no crown. Marcus Briggs stood nearby, waiting. The human soldier who had once been her enemy was now her ally. The room fell silent as Zyra raised her hand. Her voice was soft but clear. Today, we begin a new chapter, she said, not as enemies, but as partners. Together, we will rebuild what war has broken. Together, we will find peace. Marcus nodded. We fought hard to get here. Now we fight for a future where our peoples can live without fear. The soldiers whispered among themselves. It was strange to see humans and Zyrene side by side, but hope was stronger than doubt. Zyra looked at Marcus. For the first time, she spoke directly to him. Human soldier, you showed me strength beyond armor and weapons. You showed me courage, respect, and the power of hope. Marcus smiled. And you showed me the heart of a true leader. Together, we are stronger. Outside the fortress, the sun began to rise, casting warm light across the land. It was a new day for both their worlds. The Empress and the soldier stepped outside together. Around them, soldiers from both sides lowered their weapons and cheered. For years, the humans and Zareen had fought bitter wars. But now, they stood united. Plans were made to share knowledge and technology. Trade routes reopened. New leaders from both sides met to talk and listen. Marcus and Sarah worked closely, learning from each other and building trust. It was not always easy. Old fears and old wounds took time to heal. But each day brought new hope. The Empress who once taunted a human soldier was now a symbol of peace and unity. And the soldier who had taken off her armor became a hero, not just for humanity, but for all who dreamed of a better future. The stars above shone brighter that night. They seemed to watch over a new alliance, one born from courage, understanding, and the belief that even the deepest divides can be crossed. And so, the story of Empress Skyra and Marcus Briggs became a legend, a reminder that true strength comes not from armor or power, but from the heart.